welcome, namaskara, namaste, and hello. You are in the Rose Milk podcast with me, Lakshmi. So, in today's episode, we are literally traveling across borders because we have Julio, who's from the US, joining us today, who is the CEO of bioaccess, handling a clinical research organization, and we are going to talk more on patient recruitments across continents, and I think he'll help us explore the geography, culture, and innovation on how patients are actually enrolled in the clinical trials. So welcome to the podcast, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for having me here. It's a pleasure to join your show.
Nice. So do you want to give a small bit of introduction to yourself?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Lakshmi, I was born and raised in Colombia, South America, and I moved to the States many years ago, probably 40 or something. And my brother Pedro also moved from Colombia around the same time that I did. And he graduated from medical school in Colombia. And I'm going to speak about him, Pedro, because he's really the genesis of bioaccess and the impact that we're doing in Latin America with our company, our CRO. So Pedro moved to Boston. He did a couple of years of basic research at a Harvard lab. And then he went to Cleveland, Ohio to do internal medicine, his residency at the Metro Health Medical Center. And then he went back to Boston to Harvard Medical School to the Beth Israel Medical Center to do cardiology and then interventional cardiology. So Pedro, since early in his research, as I alluded to, he's been involved in research. Early in his career, he's been in his training, he's been involved in research and innovation because it's part of the curriculum of any medical school or medical training in the United States. So after Harvard, after he completed his fellowship at the Beth Israel Medical Center, he moved to Miami. He became a professor at the University of Miami, and he joined Dr. William O'Neill, who is considered one of the top authorities in interventional cardiology in the world. And Dr. O'Neill became Pedro's mentor. And they worked together for many years, and they advised many U.S. medical device startups that were developing advanced cardiovascular technologies, more specifically in the structural heart space. And they quickly realized that the work that we're doing was inside the University of Miami. It was a small office, international patient office, but it wasn't really set up as a CRO. It was just an office that was kind of coordinating the work, the clinical work that we're doing with investigators in Latin America. And they realized that there was a need to have a separate company outside of the university that was a CRO solely dedicated to helping medical device startups with their early feasibility clinical trials. And that's really the genesis of bioaccess. That was about 15 or more years ago, almost 20 years ago, if you start counting when Pedro and O'Neill started working together. So I joined the company in 2010. And I've been leading the company since, and I've been growing bioaccess to where it is now. We are in about 10 different countries, and we have run probably 50 clinical trials. We are a team of about 40 employees now. So yeah, we're excited about the future of bioaccess and clinical research in Latin America, and more specifically, medical device first-in-human research.
Impressive, Julio. I mean, that's a lot of legacy that you are.
Yeah.
Nice. I think the audiences who are listening to this or watching this video would. I think if you guys are interested in pharma or clinical research, or you're just curious about the neighborhood, how this global clinical research is happening, I think this one's for you guys, because Julio is like having a lot of experience in this domain. That's what I can say. So
Yes.
nice. So let's get started. I think this podcast is mainly going to talk about patient recruitment, how to break the barriers with these borders that we are having, because I think the only universal thought in this clinical research is it's all about the patient, what he or she wants, right? And these borders are actually creating a lot of barriers with so many legalities in various countries, and finding the correct lot of people for a correct clinical research and things like that. So we're going to talk on that. Moving on to the first segment, that's going to be the landscape of global recruitment. So if I have to ask you, why is this patient recruitment considered as one of the biggest challenges in the global arena? Like, why is it difficult?
Well, I think it is challenging, Lakshmi, because first of all, I don't have the answer. It's just as a personal opinion, because this is the biggest problem in the industry, actually. I wish I had the answer, but I think the places where you do the clinical trial makes a big difference. And most of the data probably comes from developed countries, where recruiting patients for a clinical trial is really, really difficult for many reasons. For example, if you are in the United States, you have a nice life, you have good income, you have access to the healthcare system, or Western Europe. You don't really need to have access to a clinical trial. You don't need to participate in a clinical trial unless you are about to die, you are in a terminal condition, cancer or something, and you get really, really curious, and you go online and you try to find a clinical trial because somebody told you about it, because most people don't know that this exists. So that's one thing. On the other side, you have people who are probably unemployed, and they see a sign on a bus or on a subway saying, participate in this clinical trial, we'll give you X amount of dollars. So that's another way of recruiting patients, but that's not really a good motivation, because you don't really need to participate in the trial. So I think the issue is about finding the right countries where patients are organically, naturally motivated to participate. And for example, in Latin America, most of the healthcare systems in the different countries are public. And on paper, in theory, the healthcare system is perfect, meaning you have access to a primary care physician, you have access to specialists, you have access to high-cost procedures, you have access to medications, you have access to preventative care. But in reality, that's all false. That doesn't really happen in the real world. I've seen patients in my home country, in Colombia, waiting outside of a pharmacy at 5 in the morning, waiting for the pharmacy to open at 8, so that they can pick up their medication and go to work, right? So that's really insane. I mean, patients are not really treated with dignity. So you come as a sponsor of a clinical trial or as an investigator, and you offer a patient fast access to medication, and right there you have the patient, because he or she really needs to be taken care of, right? And also, if you want to have a consultation with a primary care physician, the waiting list is 3 months out, 5 months out, or especially 6 months out, 8 months out or more, not to mention a high-cost procedure, $20,000 or something in a developing country. That's a lot of money for an insurance company or for the government. So they push and keep delaying the procedure, the authorizations and everything to get you tired. So it's just difficult for a patient, for a regular patient. So that's why clinical trials based on data, based on papers that have been published on this, is more efficient in developing economies because our countries, patients really, really need fast access and be treated with dignity by the healthcare system. So clinical trials are a solution to that.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. The later part that you just spoke about, patients should be treated with dignity. I think it's so important, and that's what we are trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and patients should see the benefit.
Right.
They should see the benefit. The benefit
Right.
is, as I said, fast access to the system. You have fast access to medications, and also you have expedited access to medical technologies, innovative technologies that do not exist in your country right now, because they only exist because of the clinical trial that is happening in this small subset of patients. So you're fortunate enough to have access to a life-changing medical technology.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Nice. So now, if I have to ask, how do sponsors or these big pharma companies choose a particular region to conduct their trials? I mean, one would be obviously statistics and, where the disease is prevalent and things like that. But is that the only reason they select a particular region?
That applies. What you're saying is valid. However, in my experience, it applies very well for rare diseases. When you're developing a rare disease therapy, of course, you have to look for a country where the disease is prevalent. And that happens a lot with rare diseases. Certain ethnic groups have certain conditions that only happens in that part of Africa or in Latin America or Asia. So then you go there to do your research. That's one thing.
Right.
The other thing is also depends on the phase of the company. If we're speaking about startup, we are dealing with a small company, 3 to 5 people, that have a couple $1 million in the bank, and they need to hit certain milestones. And one of those milestones is first in human testing, right? So they just finished animal testing. They need to validate the safety and efficacy in a small subset of patients, 5 to 20, up to 30 tops. So they are in need of fast approvals. They really need to move quickly to that first in human validation. In the United States, in Western Europe, getting these fast approvals is really difficult because of the regulatory environment. It's also really difficult to navigate these large hospital systems in the United States or in North America and Western Europe because of the bureaucracy, because of the size of the healthcare systems or the hospital systems. And it's also difficult to recruit patients for the reason we just mentioned, that patients do not really need to have access to a clinical trial, to have access to the healthcare system, because they already have good insurance. Their employer is paying for that, or you're paying out of pocket, you have money, whatever. So you don't really need to have access to a clinical trial. So in developing economies, things are different. In Latin America, more specifically, because it's the area where I specialize, the regulatory approval process, the red tape is less, and the process to get a trial approved is really fast, because countries have recognized that clinical research brings so much innovation, so much benefit to the patient, to the investigators, because of the transfer of knowledge, and also money, because it pays really well to the hospitals. It pays really well to the investigators. And also, the more research happens in a country, the more high-paying jobs are created in the local economy. So the impact in the local economy is just phenomenal. So yeah, I think based on the type of study, the country selection will change, because every company, based on what phases of research and the type of product they're researching, has different needs. For example, there are needs that pharmaceutical companies have to sell a product in Brazil. For example, you can wait for 6 months, 9 months to get approval in Brazil, because it's a country famous for taking a long time to get approval for clinical trials. But you're going to have access to a large population. I mean, 230 million people or so. So you're going to be able to sell your medical device or your drug in Brazil if you do a clinical trial locally, because you're going to engage very early on all these investigators through a clinical trial. Then you're going to publish, or they are going to publish in the top conferences in Brazil about the good results of the study. So there's a commercial interest in doing a trial in that country because of the sales potential of that country. So there are many reasons why companies choose a country.
Right. And I think to just add, recently during the COVID time, we had this decentralized trials picking up, in many places. And I think that also has been helpful in breaking these border barriers that we have been speaking. So I think if it grows to a better and bigger size, these decentralized trials, I think, can be very helpful for developing countries.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. So as you are specialized in the Latin America aspect of clinical research, so this named the segment the hidden powerhouse. Like, what makes Latin America unique attraction for these clinical trials? Like, what do you think? I think few reasons you did mention, but are there any other that attracts?
Well, we mentioned the fact that patients really want to be in a clinical trials because they need to. There's another reason, which is the physician-patient relationship is very strong in Latin America, because physicians are seen as authorities in the community. So patients really, really trust the opinion of a physician. So 50% of the convincing to get a patient recruited for a clinical trial is already done, because you already trust your physician. As I said, countries are enacting laws in Latin America to attract more clinical research, because they recognize the need to bring this industry to the country. And they also recognize that they want to be innovators. They have recognized that a handful of countries in Latin America have recognized that by exporting avocados, coffee, or bananas, or oil, is not really gonna make a sustainable economy in the long term. They need to diversify their income. They need to diversify their economies, and they have to transition from a agricultural society to an industrial society, and eventually to a knowledge society, which is the higher level of development of a country, like the countries in the group of 7, like North America, Canada, the United States, Germany, Japan. I mean, G7 countries are knowledge societies. They export knowledge, they export innovation, they do a lot of research. There's a lot of science in the country. There's a lot of papers coming out of the country, a lot of PhDs. So Latin American countries have recognized that they also have to become innovators if they want to have sustainable and diversified economies and become knowledge societies that will benefit everybody involved. I mean, everybody in the community, everybody in the country, because the poverty levels are so extreme that having diversification in the economy is really beneficial for everybody. Anyway, so the point is that I think Latin America is now mature enough to attract more and more trials for the reasons I mentioned. and countries are more stable. There used to be a lot of political instability and economical instability in Latin America, but if you follow the recent news, you can easily see that countries are more stable, more mature. They're joining the OECD, which is the club of wealthy countries around the world. International is an international organization that promotes economic development around the world. So more and more Latin American countries are being part of it, or are in the ascension path to become part of it, to join the club. You also see, for example, last year that Velocity Research, which is the largest site network in the world, just started an operation in Latin America. They created an office in Brazil, and they're going to start buying sites in Brazil, in Argentina, and Mexico. And another news is the launch of the global site certification that this organization in the UK has. It's called the International Accrediting Organization for Clinical Research. It's a London-based organization created by the industry for the industry to promote global standards in clinical research. So there are many Latin American sites that are going through that certification process, and also individuals that are part of the research staff that are being accredited. So I think Latin America is primed for attracting more and more research because of the reason you just alluded to.
Yeah, I mean, since that the countries which are are just developing, it has to grow its level from being agricultural to industrial to knowledge base, and that knowledge base, I think, it will impart the the medical sense, as in how healthy a person should live a life, because only when there's health there's anything at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that way Latin America is progressing, I suppose. So nice. Yeah. And I think you did mention few countries which are leading the way, but is there anything specific that you want to talk about? Any country in Latin America which is actually progressing way better than what it was before?
Yes. I've seen Brazil very recently. They just enacted a new groundbreaking clinical research law that will probably attract many more trials. It will speed up the approval process for a clinical trial in Brazil dramatically. It will simplify the approval process as well.
Wow.
Argentina also did a very important change in 2017. Argentina was probably a pioneer in Latin America in creating a new law to attract clinical research. I also saw Ecuador. It's a smaller country, but it's an important development in the region because big countries, smaller countries are enacting laws to attract clinical research. Mexico, COFEPRIS, which is the regulatory agency, is making very good changes. And there's an initiative at the Congress, the Mexican Congress, to create a new law to attract clinical research. El Salvador is about to approve a new law. Panama approved a new law. Paraguay also did the same thing. So more and more countries are embarking in this journey. And as I said, countries that are joining the OECD club include Mexico, which was the first in 1995 or 6 or something, long time ago, which was the pioneer in the region. Then it was Chile, then Colombia, and then Costa Rica. So those are the 4 countries. And Peru, Brazil are in the ascension path. I mean, they are on the trajectory of becoming full members. So that's a good sign for the region.
And as you talk about that, we had a discussion about like some time back regarding how clinical research are getting attracted in Australia. So they had long back itself, they had a law which if you are as a sponsor or a CRO conducting a clinical research in Australia, you would be paid back with all the taxes. Like there's zero tax for anything that is related to clinical research in Australia. And I thought that is a wonderful way to move ahead, right? Like, I mean, at end of the day, the sponsors see that spend a lot of money on the drugs and they want the money back to have a continuous innovation and research. So they would at some point see it as a business. And if this kind of a perk is given, I think why would anybody not want to go to Australia for a research, right? So yeah, I think it's wonderful to see these countries in Latin America also having great laws that are coming up. So nice. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yeah, it's really 43.5% money back. In other words, if your taxable obligation, if your tax obligation,
right.
if you don't have a tax obligation, basically, which most companies don't because these are smaller companies, startups,
Right.
then you get 43% money
Oh.
back. Exactly.
Right.
So whatever you spend in a clinical trial, you file a claim, but you have to have a local entity in Australia. You get it back.
Right.
The issue with Australia, I mean, this is all great. I love it. The thing with Australia is that it's too far for many sponsors. And it's
Right.
also a very spread out country. So
Right.
if you're looking for a large urban area, then Australia may not be the place. And if you want to have fast connectivity, short travel time, same time zone, Australia is a challenge.
Correct.
So then Mexico, Dominican Republic, Panama are probably better places to do a trial, right?
Right. So as we have started talking about other continents and things like that, so this segment would be comparing the continents. So how do these recruitment timelines differ across Europe, Asia, Latin America? So how is it?
Well, based on the data that I've seen, is I don't remember the details to be honest with you, but I've seen 30% more, 40% faster recruitment in Latin America, if I remember the papers correctly. Yeah, those are tangible numbers. I mean, numbers that I've seen in my experience in Latin America because of the reasons I just described. And also, Lakshmi, it depends on what you're comparing that recruitment time versus what. I mean, if you're comparing the recruitment time of the United States versus Latin America, very likely it's going to be faster in Latin America. But if you're comparing it with another developing country, well, that's another story. It will probably be the same. But yes, but all the literature that I've seen, all the papers, they suggest that patient recruitment time is way faster in Latin America, 30-40% faster. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And how do these regulatory frameworks and their ethical committees work? I mean, how does it impact the patient enrollment in Latin America? Like how is it different?
Yes. Well, the name of the game for startups, mostly that's the type of clients I deal with, is time. Time to activate a site. How fast can I activate a site, and how fast can I have a patient in the OR so that I can implant my device or administer my drug on a patient? So the regulatory approval process in Latin America is usually a two-step process. You get IRB, or Institution Review Board, or Ethics Committee approval, which is usually a private community inside a hospital, or a third-party committee that you hire for that trial.
Yeah.
And after that, you seek national regulatory agency or Ministry of Health approval.
Okay.
There are a few countries that do not require that national Ministry of Health approval. Countries like Panama, like Chile, do not require this second approval. You just notify the Ministry of Health of the execution of the trial, and you're done. As soon as the IRB or the Ethics Committee approves the study, you can officially recruit patients. So that also helps with patient recruitment a lot, because if you get your site activated in 60 days after submission to the IRB, like in Panama or Chile, then you're going to start recruiting patients faster.
Right, right. Okay. I mean, one-step process is, I think, a beautiful step to go ahead with the kind of clinical research timelines that we guys have, right? Nice.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a nice info people would know from now. Okay. Okay. So, any surprising lessons you have learned by working across these multiple continents?
Yes, many. But one that really stands out is that sometimes companies think that they can do things themselves. They think that is if they met an investigator at an event, at a meeting, at a conference in San Francisco, and he or she is a top cardiologist or ophthalmologist, well-educated, great credentials, and he or she lives in a country in Latin America, you can just follow his advice and get your trial done with him or her. That doesn't always work. Most of the time it doesn't work, and I've been faced with challenges where companies come to me or ask to rescue their study because they screwed up. They did the wrong thing. They chose the wrong investigator, or they didn't engage a CRO in the process of setting up the study with that investigator. So now they're desperate. Their investors are desperate. They want to do something about it. They want to activate another site. They want us to do magic to rescue the study. So choosing the right help is really important when you're doing a trial overseas.
Nice. And I think with Latin America, you should also be well versed with the languages that are prevalent there in various parts of the continent, right? So I think how do you I know that we do have translations, and Google Translator has been a great help in many of such instances. But in EDC, is there a way that you guys have found to have this translation easier? Because I remember we had a site in Spain, and although it doesn't come under Latin America, but it was very difficult for us to have a translator create the CRFs in Spanish, and it was a lot of money also that was involved in that. So how do you guys handle that in Latin America?
Yes. I think Latin America is more influenced by the United States or the English-speaking world than what Spain is. By that I mean many people are bilingual, even though it's not the general population. But you find talent. It's easy to find talent who speak the language, or at least can read and can translate using machine learning or artificial intelligence, or these new tools that we have. For example, inside our company, we have physicians who we have a team of many physicians, more than 30, fully bilingual, graduated from top schools, and they receive the documents from the official translators in Colombia. And I'm sure the translators use artificial intelligence and all that. They have their quality verification team and all that, but there's always something. There's always a mistake. So our team spends hours just looking, side by side, each one of the documents in Spanish and in English to make sure that they are correct. Because we've had cases where the regulator or the IRB rejects a study because of a bad translation.
Wow. Okay. That comes with a lot of cost then.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Nice.
So that's not an issue anymore. We ensure we get quality translation. We have to ensure. Otherwise, as you said, it's a costly mistake.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. This segment is going to be on innovation, trust, and future. So, how is this technology, that is AI or recruitment, how is it helping?
For patient recruitment, we are doing some fascinating stuff with AI. For example, we now can take the complex protocol or the complex patient informed consent form that is sometimes 30 pages long. And if you take a regular person off the street who have basic elementary schooling, he or she may not be able to understand 30 pages of legalese and just clinical language. So we now pass that document through artificial intelligence, and we can create infographics and very simple plain language documents that any patient can understand. We can also set up landing pages for any patient to go to after they see an ad on Facebook, on Instagram, and they can self-select themselves or self-screen themselves for the clinical trial. All these thanks to artificial intelligence. So I think it has dramatically impacted our recruitment. Yeah.
Nice. And I also want to add here that recently I was reading somewhere that said, AI has also been used to understand the population of certain type of patients in certain areas. So with all the data that's there in the world, so this to improve the patient recruitment on these lines. So
yes,
I felt,
I'm sure.
Wow, that's a nice step forward.
Yes, so, I agree with you. Yes. Yeah. We don't use that yet, but yes, I've heard about it. Yes.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so this is an important question, I feel. So what role does trust play in a patient participation, especially in developing countries? Like, you, as you rightly pointed out, that in Latin America, you know that 50% problem is solved when the physician and the patient's trust, levels are higher. And also you pointed out in developing countries where there are boards which says, please participate in this and you will get so and so dollars. So, like, how does this work? Because there's one group who's striving hard and not earning anything, wants more money, not sure what exactly they are getting into. There's another group which knows they are, poor and they don't have another choice but to trust the physician and, come out of their problems. So how is this conundrum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think trust needs to be in the chain, in the whole chain. I mean, the investigator needs to trust the sponsor that the validation in animals that they did was sufficient enough. Right, was good, was of quality. I mean, there is a trust element to that. I mean, you see papers, you see certificates, but you don't really know what happened. I mean, so you have to trust that sponsor, especially if it is a startup with very little money, with just an animal study done, with some basic lab or bench testing done, with a whole bunch of young kids graduated from PhD or postgraduate degrees. So that happens a lot. A lot of my clients are kids. I mean, young people, very young people, 20-something, less than 30 years old, who just graduated from a PhD, and they start a company. So if you're an investigator, you're older, then there's a trust issue there. So you have to portray quality, professionalism, and show the investigator that your animal studies, your bench testing, and all the testing you have to do is of top quality. And also the trust issue on patients and investigators, which we already mentioned, Lakshmi, which is really, really important for recruitment. I mean, if the patient doesn't trust the investigator, if the patient perceives that there's something deceiving happening here, then is a lost cause. I mean, you're not gonna, exactly, you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And I think of the quality that you're talking of, I think that's of utmost importance in clinical research, but because we're dealing with live people here, and I think qualities of like there's no compromise in that. So and
Yes,
yeah,
agree.
and the trust would build in any of such companies one only when you show that consistent quality that in your trials. So yeah, I
Exactly.
agree with that. Nice. So, okay, maybe one last question. If you want to change one thing about global patient recruitment, what would that be? Like you're just in a click, you would be able to do that. What would that be?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I've been thinking about it a lot since you asked me the question via the document that you sent me. Um, I think I would probably emphasize more the issue of simple language, plain language. The trust thing is already there based on the
Mm,
country, but I think we need to do a better job as industry, as a CRO, as a sponsors, on communicating better with patients. Now with
okay.
artificial intelligence, and this is new. I mean, we are now able to translate a 100-page study protocol into a 3-page synopsis in simple language that
Yeah.
everybody in the research team, including patients, can understand. So I think this is a major advancement in patient communication. Our landing pages, I've seen the landing pages that AI can now generate. They are fantastic. I mean, the language that it uses, and they can be translated to any language, but very plain language. So yeah, I think this is a great advantage.
Patient would not get into any of such trials where they don't understand anything, right? I think simplifying things for them would
Exactly.
make
Yeah,
it. Yeah, they
yeah,
would
yeah.
just want to know what is A, B, and C. They don't want to know what's in between. So,
Exactly. Yes, yeah. I mean, the informed consent is so difficult to understand. I've been in meetings where it takes an hour just to
yeah,
explain the study to a patient. I mean, if a patient sees an ad and they see some weird terminology, they see a landing
yeah,
page where they don't understand, they're gonna just bounce. They're just gonna abandon the page.
yeah, right. So, yeah, that's a
And
very
also, and
good
also,
concern.
by the way, the government, I think government should also encourage patients to participate in clinical research more and more. They should put
Yeah,
ads on TV, right? Because
right,
the healthcare system benefits from this. The
right,
investigators benefit from this. So everybody benefits.
right. Yeah, I think that is would be the next way forward. So, yeah, I think that's it. Do you want to add anything else to the
No,
listeners?
I'm very pleased to have been able to speak here in your podcast, Lakshmi. Thank you so much for having me here. People can
Yeah.
find me online. Just Google bioaccess or Google Julio Martinez-Clark. I am
Mm-hmm.
all over Google because we publish a lot of content via articles that we write, blog posts,
Nice.
our podcast, and on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, he's very active on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. Yes.
yeah, yes.
Nice. So thank you, for being on this show and being so open about so many things. And I think your insights on how patient recruitment can be better was so valuable. If at least 1 or 2% of any of the things that we have spoken comes to reality, is I think one of the greatest achievements that we can have
Yes, agree.
towards the health,
Yes,
medical and health, at least for the
yes,
developing countries.
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah, so thank you, and maybe until we catch up next time, just stay curious and keep sharing your knowledge with all the
Absolutely,
people.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Take
Bye,
care.
like,
Bye.
take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.